Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Blockchain Banter Trading Crypto. I'm here with Keith Allen, TA and algo trader, order book analyst, and co-founder of Material Indicators, along with Dr. Mark Richardson, project lead at Bancor and Carbon DeFi. Thank you guys, as always, for joining me. I titled this one, Bitcoin Breakout, right? Is the bull run officially here? I think anybody who has been following at all over the last, at least week, right, has seen Bitcoin reach these new all-time highs. Pretty impressive too. Previously it was 73. Now all of a sudden we're at 93. It kind of just happened fast, right? And I think super fast it did. Mark, we were sitting in Thailand at DevCon. All of a sudden we saw on this billboard, what was it, 81? I think when it hit 81, all of a sudden it just started flashing in Thailand on the street at this little dive, Bitcoin, and it was 81 something thousand across the billboard. So it was just kind of neat to see it all happen. But my question to you guys really is, obviously we all like to think this is the official start of the bull run. Anytime we see, before it was like everybody got excited when it was like a 0.5% breakout, this was pretty significant. What are you guys seeing? What are you feeling? What are you looking at? And are you thinking that this is the official start of the bull run?
Mark, you want to go first? I can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Mark. You're muted.
It depends on what you mean by start of the bull run. I think from an unbiased perspective, you could argue that Bitcoin has been in a bull run since November of 2022.
Yeah.
This is where it had its bottom around 14K. We're already up to 92K.
So maybe the question is more like, have we validated the bull run or the bull market?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Hard to say. I think that it's a very compelling price movement, like no doubt about it. It's brought with it a lot of optimism. It's brought with it a lot of optimism and a lot of, let's say, market confidence. I can certainly see it shifting that way. And it's exciting to have Bitcoin get out of the the 55 to sort of 68, 69 range that it was bound in since February of this year. Traditionally, this kind of November, December period is bullish in just like a lot of markets in general. Traders used to refer to something as like a Christmas rally, which is just, this pattern where things towards the end of the year start to pick up momentum. And so some of those more bullish price targets, I think, are looking less and less outlandish. High price target is dependent on who you're asking, I suppose. I think that we could continue to see Bitcoin rally from here. But I do also, always with caution, I'm always the person that likes to point out how bearish things could be or might be. So I don't want to sound, I don't want to be too out of character. But it does look like
Nobody will ever accuse you of being out of character, Mark.
Thank you very much. But I do think that it is, it looks like a compelling move. It wouldn't surprise me to see if it keeps moving up. There are a few things that I think that it's contingent on. One is that the NVIDIA earnings report comes out next week. And I think that there's like not just Bitcoin, but like the entire market, all speculative assets are kind of contingent on that coming out relatively good. And it's very unclear which way it's going to go. And it's not necessarily that, we're not just waiting on a good report, we're waiting on a great report from NVIDIA. Because in order to justify its stock price, or at least the level of confidence that people have in the stock price, we really need that earnings report to be much higher than anyone anticipates.
Even if it's
waiting
bad,
to see how that goes.
Mark, question for you. Even if it is a miss on expectations, how hard, obviously that's a monster stock, right? But how hard can it tank the market in a worst case scenario?
We're talking about, what's NVIDIA worth now? $3 trillion? Like it's it's big. Like this isn't like you know, this is it would be. I think Nvidia by itself is like slightly larger than the .com bubble. That we can. I'll need to qualify that later with some
That
actual.
one company is larger than the entire .com bubble.
I think so.
Interesting.
Well,
Not something
it's
that I've
hard
been. Not,
to-
I would say that that's not something that I've been really dialed into. So I can't really speak to that. But you know, obviously, at the rate that all markets have been climbing here this year, especially later in the year, it's easy to envision something popping.
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah, the entire .com bubble was 1.4 trillion, and Nvidia by itself is worth twice that.
Yes, but so have a lot of other assets appreciated, right? So the market as a whole,
of course,
is right.
Yeah,
It's
and
scaled.
yeah, exactly. It's scaled. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, like the day of trading before the report comes out. Because I'd really like to see if people start to price that in. I'm also looking to see if there's any sort of news articles about, smaller class businesses not buying the H100s at the rate that they used to, and that kind of thing. But
how
I
much
do
of an
think
effect do
that
you think all of that would have on Bitcoin, though, itself?
I think it'll affect the whole world economy, and in Bitcoin included.
Keith, do you
And
watch the stocks as closely? I mean, you said you haven't been following that closely, but do you agree with what Mark is saying? That they are.
like I said, I'm not nearly as in tune to that as Mark is. So
Yeah.
I don't even want to comment on that in terms of whether I think that. I mean, I know that a single asset as large as NVIDIA is can have a serious impact on the market in both directions. We've seen that happen all year, right? But I think there are many other things that could impact the market as much, if not more, including whether or not the Fed decides to cut in December, including an upcoming yet to be determined Treasury pick for Trump. I mean, but in terms of Bitcoin, there's a lot going on there that is positive for the outlook of Bitcoin. Based, we knew that if Trump got elected, that there was likely going to be a pump, right?
What they call the Trump pump. Yeah.
The Trump pump is real. And love him or hate him, you could deny it all you want, but if you fight it, you're not going to win. And so we also forecasted that not only would there likely be a rapid pump, but the faster it went, the greater the probability of a partial or full retracement would be. And so because of that, I'm very happy to finally see some consolidation here. If you recall, it was literally November 4th, we were once again knocking on the door of 69K, which was the 2021 top. We had months and months of rejections since March at that level. That was my number. That was my line. Everybody was talking 70K. 69 was the one for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're splitting hairs over the dollar amount, but that was really the level that I needed to see broken to get us in and hold. And like all of the other breakouts since 25K, that 25 to 30K range, I was hoping, anticipating a retest of that 70K to validate that breakout. And just like when we left that 25 to 30K range, and just like when we left that 40 to 45K range, never got that retest.
Right.
Fool me once, fool me twice. Not going to fucking fool me again. Right. So I've been in tune to that, right? Hey, the market's not always going to give us what we anticipate or what we think should happen. Right. You have to trade what is in front of you. And because of that, I have completed building my position. You know, I spent months and months trying to improve that dollar cost average by
and
hairs.
just recently you said you were done doing that, right?
Right.
Was it our last call? You're like, I'm pretty much done with it. Like, I don't,
Right.
it's, yeah.
And so quite honestly, that game did not pay off for me as much as I had hoped, because I never got the deep retest that I really wanted.
Right.
I'm still in a very, very good position. You know, waking up today, seeing Bitcoin trade in the low 90s with support and consolidation happening, knowing that I dollar cost averaged my way into a mid 40s price point. I'm pretty happy.
Right.
And so, with the capital that I have left, I'm taking some alt trades that look promising, and I'm not the greedy guy that's going to hold these, looking for 300%. Hey, if I get it, great. But, I've got targets. I'm looking for those targets. I'm playing them less conservatively than I have in the past because I left so much money on the table.
So you're not trading Bitcoin right now. You're holding off. You've built that position.
I'm
You're
holding.
more focused on
I'm holding. I'm not buying at this level.
Right.
Now,
but what's crazy, we were just talking before the call started, is we still see a lot of these large wallets that are still buying at this level. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, they have more money than me.
Keith.
If I had more money, okay. If I had more capital, then I would be doing that. But I want to have some capital to be able to trade a little bit. While I know that my Bitcoin position is secure. Now, if we see a breakdown, I will lock in some profits and recycle that capital.
Right.
How much of that depends on how deep the breakdown goes, because I don't want to give it back. But I would be very happy if I didn't have to buy any more Bitcoin. I don't want to be buying 6-figure Bitcoin.
Right.
And so, I think that at the time, if and when that happens, and I think I really don't think it's a matter of if, but a matter of when we get into that next range. I think that we're going to see a series of things happen. We're going to see a lot of shorts open up in 100K. We're going to see a lot of late longers taking that breakout trade. And I really do think that institutional money comes in even more aggressively when that happens, because they're like, oh shit, now where are we going? Right. But I think what will happen is that those shorts will get squeezed. Those longs will then get flushed and will retest support. And then we will see that next leg happen. I still have a price target really coming off of the measured move off of the cup and handle that we've discussed, weeks ago. And I could show those things.
We could bring up if somebody wants to bring up their chart, go for it.
All right, let me get the right chart showing here.
I'm also curious, Mark, you were saying earlier, maybe the question isn't, is the bull run officially here, but does it actually confirm, right? Considering where we were last November. How significant was that breakout last November? Do you guys, maybe we could take a peek at that, and how long did it last? Because I know historically November and December are pretty good months. But what do January, February look like? Because I know we didn't get the 2 retraces or the 2 retests that we were expecting in the last year.
Right.
But at some point it did retrace, didn't it?
Well,
I mean, it hasn't been up only, right?
I,
But
I
how
think
significant
I think on
was
our
that?
last call, I think on our last call, and this made me revisit the charts. On our last call, Jen, you pointed out that you had seen some a post that
Mhm.
that on these elections, was it elections we were talking about? It was
It
elections
was
versus no.
elections.
It was elections or Novembers. That they all had breakouts that never looked back. And I went back and I looked, and we had seen where there were a lot of cases where that was true, but it wasn't 100% of the time. I think we were looking at like post halving periods versus not in those cycles. And so but historically, fourth quarter has been positive for Bitcoin in
Mhm.
most years, especially in early, post halving cycles. And so that was something that weighed on my decision to actually go ahead and buy that last little bit, because I didn't think that we would get that. I didn't think that there was a high probability that we were going to get back to 69K.
Yeah.
And so in terms of what happened this year, the buying actually started leading up to this run that we're in now. And I guess I could look at that chart. That started really in October, where was that? Okay. Actually, it actually began the bottom of this trend that we're in now, this macro trend that we're in now, started on the FTX crash. All right. And which is incidentally where I started building this position. And incrementally bought, et cetera, et cetera. But in October, we started to see October of 23, we started to see some buying, right here. We had this consolidation period. This is the one in hindsight that is really the best buying opportunity of this cycle, in my opinion, where we consolidated in this 25 to 30K range. I remember vividly, I was traveling this day from my nephew's wedding, and we had this breakout. I was like, golly, let's go back and test it. Never happened, right? Got dusted here.
Yeah.
And so in November, that this trend obviously continued, but the real robust buying began on literally Christmas Day, December 25th, where we saw, and that's really where we saw, and I'll show you that on the on fire charts, where we really saw the buying ahead of the ETF. ETFs were scheduled to launch on January 11th. We saw some heavy buying out of whales and sharks during that time, and I'll illustrate that for you here on fire charts. I guess we could go to the.
And it really didn't look like, to answer my own question, that there was any sort of a significant retest or anything of that sort. It looked like there might have been somewhere in like February, maybe.
There hasn't been. I mean, yeah, we've had some dips. I'll go back to that in a second. I just want to carry through this thought that I was sharing about the ETFs. So let me filter out some of these. This is our bin CVD in fire charts, right? By order size, right? Brown one is the mega whales, purple is whales, $100,000, $1 million orders, and red sharks, $10,000 to $100,000 orders. And historically, purple has really dominated the price action in order flow. And that's because even though these brown wega males, these brown mega whales, did I say wega males? These brown mega whales make larger orders, they don't make nearly as many of them. And so the volume coming out of purple is much higher. But during this time, you can see these red whales really, these red sharks rather, really ramped up their volume. And if we move that over to absolute CVD, we could see that was literally billions of dollars here, starting December 25th.
What was that? Nearly 20 billion, no? That's what I'm
Starting
saying.
December, no. The whole, at this point during this time frame, this is showing negative. This is outflow from here, right? So
Ah,
so all order classes combined had sold 20 billion in that period. But since this period, we could see that that $10,000 to $100,000 order class was net negative 9.6 billion, roughly, negative 10 billion. And since that time through early to mid March, those are $5 billion in purchases. They then started selling through this range that we chopped. We went to an all-time high at 73,
three.
right? 73.8, something like that.
Yeah.
And they distributed. They distributed into that range, and that was a hell of a trade for them, right? They made a lot of money there. Look what's happening now. All right, so we have no way of knowing if this is actually going to turn into the same kind of accumulation that happened.
See that
here,
little slope up though.
but they have once again started to buy here, and so it will be interesting to see how this develops from this point, right? So, part of this game is realizing gains. There's a difference between investing and trading, and at this point, that was a trade that played out very, very well for them. They made their profits up here, and now they're reloading. Conceivably, again, it's too early to tell, but imagine that they do this same thing here, and then start selling once we clear 100K, right? So Mark is the champion of buy as prices going down and sell as prices going up, and that's exactly the game that those guys seem to play. So you had asked about those dips from November, I think, right? And yes,
Yeah.
listen, there's always dips in the market, and even in bull markets, we can see significant drawdowns, right? We can see corrections that go 10, 20, 50, even in some cases, more than that, 70%, right? The COVID crash was nasty. And that was a bit of an anomaly, but just look at the distribution from the mid-cycle top back in 2021 to the rally that came after, right? That was 56%.
Right.
And then boom, right back to an all-time high. That could absolutely happen after a run like this. And we're obviously this is in a scenario where we could see that again. So what scares me about this move is these straight lines, right?
I was gonna say those are like, we don't see like serious green candles like that very often. Like they're
Right.
pretty significant.
I mean, there's times when it happens, but you either need a consolidation or a correction to, validate what's happening. And so the fact that we're
Look
getting
at November 23, Keith, or the end of October, beginning of November 23, all the way on the left. There's that green candle, just like we had seen this November.
right, and so here was a bit of a correction,
but nothing
right?
really to retest
from
that
November
at
9th,
all.
and that was 8%. Give me a break. That's not even 8%.
That doesn't even count.
7.5%.
After that sort of move, right?
So that's nothing. And what we've learned is, and this is why a lot of TradFi investors still may be reluctant to trade Bitcoin and crypto, is because of the volatility, right? I read a comment this morning on Twitter about, somebody said, does anybody even remember who Warren Buffett is? Well, yes, we remember who it is, and don't chastise the guy. I mean, he has done more and made more for not just himself, but countless people with investment strategies that are based on fundamentals and principles, which don't exist in Bitcoin, at least not in the traditional sense that you value a company that you could invest in.
Right.
And so, at 90 some odd years old, Should this guy throw out all of the principles that
It's
he
worked well for him.
that he has built his life, his fortune, the fortune of countless others on, to take a flyer on Bitcoin? Well, maybe he should take a flyer, but you can't really expect a guy to just throw everything out and ape into something that he doesn't understand. And quite frankly, if he doesn't buy his first bit of Bitcoin, well, if he doesn't buy it ever, then so be it. But if he waits until it's 100,000 or 200,000 to buy, guess what? He doesn't give a shit. He's not he's not a crypto bro with a $400 account where it matters, right? He will consider that risk management. He will consider that waiting until he had confidence in a very young asset class, relatively speaking, to then maybe invest. But I think some of his companies have actually got stakes in companies like Riot that are so he may have some indirect exposure without being directly exposed to it.
Right.
You would think that he's got enough people around him that could advise and say, "Hey, listen, there's something to this," but obviously not something that he or his late partner Charlie Munger were ever comfortable with. Now, don't come at me, crypto bros. Don't come at me going, "Oh, you're stupid. You're giving Warren Buffett any credit." Yeah, I give the guy credit. If this isn't for him, this isn't for everybody, right?
Right.
Crypto is not for everybody. And you see these ETFs doing a lot of business, right? And maybe that's a way that retail is entering the market because they're not comfortable or they don't understand the real inherent value of Bitcoin, or they're confused by the onboarding process, or they just like the convenience of being able to buy through their traditional brokerage houses where they're already trading and investing, or maybe they just don't like the counterparty risk. So I don't fault people for doing that. They're making money too, right?
Well, it's like I talked to my parents, a couple years ago, and they're like, "Jen, we've worked really hard for our retirement. We'll get a little bit of exposure, but other than that, like, this isn't something that we're willing to gamble, and we don't understand this."
So
Like,
what's interesting? We were talking about ETF flows before,
yeah.
and
Boy, Bitcoin and Ethereum are polar opposites at the moment, huh?
Well, Bitcoin, there were a couple of BlackRock has been on a tear the past 10 days or so.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trading days. One day they didn't buy anything when others were selling, but these guys started panicking, and guess what? Now they're buying back in higher. Maybe this was just profit taking, but was it planned profit taking? Did price hit targets and they said, "Okay, we're going to sell," or was it like, "Oh shit, it's going to pull back and dump"? So,
right.
And ETH actually, oh God, the ads, stop the ads already. ETH just has not had the footing that Bitcoin has, and nobody ever expected to. But it is, in relative terms to other ETFs, it's actually performing. Now, ETH also needs to find its breakout, and ETH is trading in a place where it has actually broken the structure, and it is above the key moving averages here. But these key moving averages need to unwind, still. So the fact that it's still trading above the 50-week moving average, above that 3,000 level, is a positive for me. I do have a small ETH position. It's underwater, and I'm willing to keep riding this. If it breaks back down, I dump it. I take my lumps and I move on. In terms of the question, did we validate a Bitcoin breakout?
I mean, you
Uh,
look at that and it's kind of hard. Like, I'm looking at the screen,
you want to go
it's
back to ETH? You're talking ETH or Bitcoin?
no, I'm talking Bitcoin right now.
Okay.
When you think about the last week in general, it's like, okay, that was a $25,000, pump, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when you look at that chart and you look at it over the last year, I mean, it's no joke when you go from 14 to, 92.
Yeah, it's no joke, but a lot of this, you know, for me and a lot of people, this I considered bear market rallies, right? There was no validation. We were below all the moving averages. The only positives here were that we had tested support at the trend line. We tested it here and we tested it here. And
Hmm.
here we got a bounce off of the 200-day moving average. But with losing the moving averages being all death crossed up, that was not positive for me. Once we notice how things started to fly. Price after this extended consolidation here, and it always cracks me up when people complain about price crabbing. Oh, it's crabbing, it's boring, it's horrible. Guess what? Most often than not, that's the area you want to stack, right? We know
Yeah.
this now. In hindsight, we know this now. And what we learn now, we use next time around. And, some of us, we have to learn it a couple of times until it gets through. But, hence
Well,
my,
it's not even just like it's just Bitcoin. I
pardon
mean,
me?
Mark, we're always playing around with the simulator on Carbon DeFi. And we're always looking at these sorts of trading pairs that have this volatility profile, this ranging going on, right? It's not just Bitcoin that you can,
No,
take these
not at
sorts of
it's
phases
not
in
at
the
all just Bitcoin,
simulator.
and a lot of the alts,
Yeah.
especially during these Bitcoin consolidation periods, a lot of the alts perform, right?
Yeah.
Because money's rotating out. But when Bitcoin's flying, people want to get back. They go out of alts back into Bitcoin. They wait for the consolidations, then they go back into alts. And as a high tide raises all boats, the market is rising with Bitcoin, and there's a lot of excitement and maybe euphoria going along with that, which isn't necessarily healthy, but it is what it is, right? You know what's happening. You trade it. And so you recall we had um, all of these death crosses back
Yeah, we had
in
like 4 or 5 of them,
back in the
right?
summer, right? We had a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And at the time, we identified that double bottoms seem to be a good way, a good sign of recovery on these kinds of events. And so we got our double bottom, and this is where I really started to get excited about what was happening. Right, we got the double bottom. Then we started to reclaim the moving averages. Boom, we reclaim this one, reclaim this one, reclaim this one. And then we started getting the golden crosses that are the opposite of the death cross.
Right.
And on the weekly time frame, we uncrossed, each of them one by one. And most recently, the 100 over the 200. So now we're in perfect order. The 21, the 50, the blue 100, the purple 200. Now, looking at this, oh, that's on the daily time frame, excuse me. And this one just happened. On the weekly time frame, same set of circumstances. Actually happened earlier, right? And so now all of the moving averages are unwound. That's perfect. That's harmony. That's harmony. Perfect harmony. And so for me, the fact that they have all unwound, we're above the trend, we're well above the moving averages in all time frames. That to me is validation that the bull market is indeed validated, in my opinion. And so, does that mean that we can't get a correction? Of course, we can have a correction. We already talked about that. Where might
Right.
that correction take us? The likely landing zones for me are obviously technical in nature. It would take us back to prior RS flips. I really don't think that the prior, that all-time high that we had for a few months in that 73.8 range, it is what it is. But to me, the 2021 top is really that 69K range is really
Going to be
a
where
much
we
stronger technical
retest.
level.
Yeah.
Right. So sure, we could go test this. Maybe we bounce. Great. Maybe not. If we don't, then we would go test that 69 and then on down to the moving averages. The fact that at least the 20 and 50 at the 21 and the 50 at this point are well above the trend line is positive to me. Over time, these two will drag above the trend line. And that, this is, technically in that black swan scenario, we could, even if we went all the way down, that's 55%. Well, where did I show you 55%? Same thing here, right? So imagine that. Imagine if that scenario played out. It is exactly the same 55%. And guess what? That would be strong, a strong place to bounce. But personally, I think the trend line would be the strongest place for foundational, support. Because if we break it, then it's like, oh shit, what happened, right? And it would, in my opinion, take a heavy black swan event to send us below that trend line. Even if we went to the trend line, that's a 45% move that gets us down to that 51, 52K range, which of course was a consolidation range for a long time. So that's here. Actually, it wasn't that long, but it was indeed one of our consolidation ranges, and it's the only one of these three that ever got retested with this wick. And this was a bit of an anomaly as well. This crash from that Japanese carry trade unwinding.
Oh, that's right.
Back in August. So there's a reason for everything, and when price lands on a level, whether it is establishing support or rejection from resistance, those aren't arbitrary numbers. Those aren't arbitrary levels. There's always a reason for it. And if it does appear to be an arbitrary level, chances are the move's not done. And so now that we're in price discovery, it becomes a little bit more difficult, right? Where is the resistance from overhead going to be? Because we don't have any real technical targets. We're in price discovery. And so in addition to establishing solid support, and we're not there yet, right? Look, we have a series of daily higher lows, which is obviously bullish, but where's the actual consolidation? And so that needs to be established still.
No, in the beginning of the call, you said you were happy to see a little bit of the consolidating. Are you just looking at like the last week?
I'm happy to see this consolidating. Yeah, I mean, it started on November 12th, right? So we see a little bit. We've had some retests, and we can see this perhaps better on a shorter time frame chart.
Mark, if there's something that you're seeing on your chart too, I mean, chime in here.
That's fair. I'm enjoying listening to Keith.
So here we can see on a 4-hour chart, and you rarely see me go to that, but I was looking to see where support would go if we got a retest, right? And we had a little bit here in this 75K level, 75, 76K. 75 to me is more psychological. 76, actually, just if you look at where the consolidation is more technical. And we did retest and get support here. And then again, down here at this 87.5 range. And so I had drawn this line last Thursday or Friday, to see if we were indeed on a trajectory, because people were saying, oh, how soon till we get to 100K? Well, if we had stayed on this trajectory, we would have hit 100K tomorrow. That's obviously not happening. We broke through over the weekend. So, but we're getting some consolidation here. I'm not in a hurry to tick 100K, to be honest with you. In my opinion, the longer it takes,
healthier.
the healthier it is, right? So I want to see some consolidation here. I can certainly see it happening. I mean, Yes, there's a chance it could happen by Thanksgiving. There's a chance it could happen by the end of the year. There's a chance it happens by Inauguration Day on January 20th. All of those things are possible, right? I mean, to do
Question
that,
for you guys. Oh, go ahead, Keith. I'm sorry.
to do that, if we want to just get creative with line draw, creative license with drawing lines, where does Bitcoin have to stay above to do that? And if we drew this, at this point, this is not valid technical analysis. In my opinion, we're just, when people go, hey, it's random lines on charts, it kind of is. Thanksgiving is what, Thursday, the 28th? So
I don't recall.
yeah, that's next
You say
Thursday.
21.
So
Oh yeah, 28th. Okay.
so to be at 100K by Thursday, Bitcoin needs to stay above this line, right?
Okay.
But this is not, again, this is not technical analysis. This is just an arbitrary freaking line. That means that's just a gauge of where you want to see price going, ultimately appreciating upwards. And you could do the same thing to the end of the year. Again, that's just drawing lines in random places, which I don't put a lot of value in of, like, hey, where's support? It's just a matter of, if you're curious of where price needs to be to hit 100K by whatever date you want, you basically need to draw a line from where that target is to where price is now, and see if you stay above that level. In terms of my targets, I still, where do I have it? I still have this target on my, based on this cup and handle structure. We had a 77% pullback because I use log scale. We do it percentage based, 77% to the downside, 77% to the upside, and that puts the target up at around 122.5K. That does not mean, there's a couple of things that doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that we have to hit that target. Doesn't mean we will hit that target. Doesn't mean we can't overshoot that target. That just means, from strict technical analysis, that's the measured move off of this structure, if you believe this is a valid structure. Now, in terms of where we could find resistance, interestingly, and for what it's worth, this orange channel here is my lifetime channel, was drawn well before this cup and handle was drawn. Okay. And coincidentally, they correlate perfectly, at least at this date, right? So that basically gets us there by December, if that were to indeed happen. So I find that interesting. Now, we don't necessarily have to make it back into that line, make it back into that channel. If we do, that would be amazing. But looking at the lifetime history of Bitcoin, you can see there's been a couple of times where we actually tick the top of that channel. The midline actually works as resistance as well from time to time. And so if that were to happen, I view this channel as the glass ceiling on price discovery. Okay. So we could discover all we want, never make it back into that channel, and still have 6-figure, 7-figure Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm looking ahead to 2027, 2028 there, Keith.
Okay. And so if we do make it into this channel, then the next glass ceiling is the center line and up to the top, right? $5 million Bitcoin. And we're talking years, right? This is, if this happens quickly. Now, what could accelerate this? Well, you got a guy about to come in office who's talking about a Bitcoin reserve. I heard a rumor. I didn't read the article, but I saw something about the U.S. selling gold reserves to buy Bitcoin.
I saw a few different types of articles, not necessarily the US and gold. I mean, that was one of them that I had seen, but there are quite a few that are coming out from all over
Okay,
now in regards to
imagine this scenario, and I would encourage anybody who hasn't done so to check out Ray Dalio and his take on um, the new world order.
Is
And
it
he
DAHLIO or how do you spell it?
D
I'm going to put it in the
DALIEO.
DALIEO.
Yes,
Okay.
and he's done a lot of research on the economies around the world, and has discussed that every 60 to 150 years there's a shakeup in the world order. You know, in the early days, Dutch had the Dutch had the world reserve, were at the top of the world order and were the reserve currency. Then it went, and this is not going to be in order, but it went to I mean, I think it maybe his research may date back to the Roman Empire, but then pre World War II, obviously Great Britain, and then after the World War II, the U.S. became the world reserve currency, and he talked about the things that happen that break down economies, and inflation, chaos, and obviously other countries potentially colluding. Well, we've had it all, right? From
Yeah.
COVID to what now? 4 years of Trump seeding doubt and chaos into our democracy. To
Things escalating in Ukraine and Russia right now.
things escalating in Ukraine and Russia, things escalating in between China and Taiwan, things escalating between Russia, China, Taiwan, the Middle East, between all of those adversaries now colluding against the U.S., which started at the not this past Olympics in 24, but in the 2022 Olympics, when we saw Putin and Xi Jinping together, forming strengthening their alliance. Their whole purpose, and the purpose from on this war in Ukraine and what's now happening in the Middle East, et cetera, is designed to destabilize the U.S. economy, destabilize the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. So now
so maybe we should be considering that too when we're looking at everything that's going on. Mark, where did you go? Are you going to be back here in a minute? Because we have about 5 minutes. Keith,
I want Mark to weigh in, and I want Mark to weigh in on this. So imagine this. Okay, so China is trying to become the world reserve currency, and the yen has and they've been on the yuan has been on trend to do this, right? For the past several years, has been gaining on the U.S. dollar. So imagine this. Nobody in their right mind would believe that the U.S. would ever start trading and doing business in Chinese currency, right? Rather than allow our partners around the world to buy things from the U.S. in Chinese currency, might they accept Bitcoin? So now imagine that this is the perfect scenario for Bitcoin to potentially become a world reserve currency. So no sovereign nation has that rank at the top of the world order in terms of the reserve currency. I'm not enough of an economist to be able to say that could happen, but that feels like what is happening with the positioning of fiat currencies around the world with inflation, and the timing and positioning of Bitcoin as we stare at it right now, with a guy coming into office that says he wants to have a reserve backed a Bitcoin backed reserve.
Wouldn't that seem like too volatile an asset, though?
Well, it is now, but this isn't going to be. It's not like they're going to overnight buy trillions of dollars of Bitcoin.
Well, that would be
And
nice.
with the ETFing of Bitcoin, does this, do these things help stabilize Bitcoin over time?
Mark.
Remains to be seen. I think that if Bitcoin was to become a world reserve currency or used in the same capacity that they are today, that it wouldn't be worth anywhere, or that it wouldn't be appealing anymore. The reason why Bitcoin has such a following is because of its anti-establishment nature, and because it is an extremely speculative, investment or trading option. I think to legitimize it as something that the world governments now control, it would be immediately rejected, and there would be other alternatives brought about quickly to replace it and embraced by the community. It's almost like you have to live long enough to see everything you love die, to know that eventually these things become it's like when the hipsters say something like, I used to listen to this musician before they were cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I know what that sentiment is. It's that feeling of, now that it's become popular, I don't value it anymore.
That's entirely possible, for sure.
Even some musicians have remarked that about themselves. Like Eminem, when he was when I was a teenager, was kind of, he part of his brand was how incompatible he was with mainstream. And then for him to become profoundly mainstream, I think was a very sick twist of irony for him. And maybe challenged his sense of identity.
Right. He was very anti-establishment. Still has a degree of anti-establishment, but there's no denying that he, did show up at a Harris campaign rally and did have Obama singing his lyrics. Right.
Yeah, it's a bit sanitized. But yeah, and I think if Bitcoin was to go through that transition, it would feel for many a little sad.
For sure, I don't think for sure, but enter the store of value conversation. Look at gold. Gold is not exciting to anybody, but Peter Schiff, and I don't see a lot of people.
Those same fundamentals, though. Like,
Say
I think
again?
That's what Mark was. I said the fundamentals, like where Bitcoin got its origin. Mark, also, I know you have a hard stop in like 1 minute.
I do. Yeah, neither gold nor Bitcoin have very solid fundamentals. So, for example, let's say that it was to be used as a national reserve currency. I'm not sure that the Bitcoin blockchain could support the number of transactions that nations have to make. And I doubt that they're going to use the Lightning Network, for example. So we might have to considering, what would a hard fork of Bitcoin look like? And if it is being considered as a reserve currency of the world, how much political influence would go into that?
I believe I've heard grumblings of that discussion actually already starting.
Yeah, like this, if it becomes politicized, I promise you, we're going to be disappointed with the outcome. But I do have to go. But thank you so much for the call, and I'm sorry to leave it on that note. I wish I had participated more actively.
Mark, I also know that you have a new feature on Carbon DeFi. We're drawing lines and things like that. I wanted you to show. So next week, maybe I can have you show your screen and we can draw some random lines on your chart.
Yes, next week, I promise.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you so much for Mark. Thank you so much for just kind of sharing your screen, walking us through everything that you're seeing. Kind of exciting to see. I'm still curious about this, fool me 3 times thing. You really don't think that we'll wind up retracing or retesting those levels at all?
Well, I'm not saying
we shouldn't plan on it.
I'm not saying that it can't happen. In fact, again, it should, right? But just based on what we've seen historically, I don't have a lot of confidence in that happening. I do think that it's likely that we get a pullback to, you know, likely the key moving averages would come into focus. I'd be very surprised at this point if we, just based on the demand that's here now, if we made it down back down to 70K without a serious event being the catalyst for that. But I could very much see a correction to the, any of these levels where we've had prior confluence. There's some at 80K. There's some down here at that 76 we talked about. And right now we're trying to establish it up here, in that 90K range. So, time will tell. There's not a lot here, right? Remember how much time we spent consolidating here? And
Yeah,
here,
we didn't even
and
get
here?
to look at the liquidity. Where the liquidity's at. I saw that there were some different asks and things in there, like when we briefly went to fire charts earlier, but we really didn't get to see. I was curious.
Yeah, we do have, remember all the time we talked about thin order books. Well, those order books
Right.
aren't very thin right now. We have a fair amount of liquidity in this range, just between 85 and 95K. And so maybe this is the consolidation range that's forming right now. I think any retest of support is a good thing to see, and you can see it's fortifying here above 90K. It's going to take a lot to get through this, to get up to this 100K level. But what we've seen so far, there's really at this stage no amount of liquidity that can stop price from punching through if the sentiment is there to do it, right? And we see it now look, this has changed here very recently, right?
I was going to say,
Just
I don't
today.
think that was there when we first looked. I
Right.
think
So
that
this
was pretty
move-
much blank there.
This moved from down. I can filter some of this out a little bit, and we can maybe see this a little bit better. Some of the bid liquidity down here has been moved up. It's laddered up into this 89 to 91K range.
And lots of confidence in it retracing that much
that's going to
farther.
help. That should help eat away at some of this liquidity right overhead. Will it be enough? Is it going to be enough to punch all the way through? Time will tell. But we can see when whales are buying, and we can see when liquidity is moving up. And when you see bid liquidity moving higher, and whales buying, those are pretty bullish signs.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll wait and see, right? Thanksgiving next week. Oh, yeah. We will have our call next week. It's on Tuesday, not Thursday.
It's on
I was going to wish
Tuesday.
everybody a happy early Thanksgiving, but I'll wait till next week.
We'll have some exciting things to share with you guys then.
I think it's going to be an exciting next couple of months.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Listen,
however it winds up playing out, right?
Historically, we have had some pretty solid Q4s in this asset class. So especially when we are in bullish cycles, and we're certainly in a bullish cycle at this point. So I'm looking forward to seeing where things go, but I do think at some point in time there will be a correction, whether it is a rejection from 100, whether it is a around inauguration with Trump taking office, and that becomes a bit of a sell the news event. It all remains to be seen.
Right.
And I mean, with those cabinet picks, what could possibly go wrong?
I keep thinking about what's going on just globally. How that's going to affect everything. I'm watching all of everything escalate to,
Right. So if he ends the war by the war in Ukraine by his first week in office, that'd be great for the markets.
Right.
If there's some unforeseen escalation with any of these geopolitical hotspots, that's negative for the market. And especially once he takes office, if things move against him, And that's not going to be that's not going to be good.
Yeah. Well, the next 6 months are going to be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Keith,
Like it or
thank you
not,
so much.
good or bad.
Well, we'll be here to talk through it.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining me up here. Everybody, to all of our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. Love our Tuesday calls every Tuesday, 3 p.m. UTC. Make sure you follow Keith on X. It's KA. Keith, correct me if I'm wrong because I'm doing this from memory. KA Productions is your personal and material indicators is MI_ALGOS, right?
Yes, and I see you got a little typo on Ray Dalio's name. It's DALIO.
Could have
Maybe I
sworn
gave you
you
an
said
extra letter.
IEO. I'm going to have to play it
DALIO.
back. I'm just kidding. Hold on. DALIO.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There it is.
That's the guy.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
Keith, again, thank you. And to all of our viewers, thank you guys so much. Enjoy your week, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Okay. Have a good one.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks. See you guys.